Hey, welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, I appreciate you for checking me out. Hope I don't disappoint you. But my name is Maurice, and today I want to make another case to find out how to put Daredevil into Marvel Champions as a hero. I know there's the custom content that's out there, but I think that this is a pretty good idea. I was on a podcast recently with Riley Stock. I'll have a link to his podcast so that you all can go and check him out. If you want to hear me and him talk some nonsense for about an hour or so, you're more than welcome to check that out. But as he and I were talking right before the podcast, I had an idea that came to my mind about Marvel Champions, and I think that right after X-Men, however many cycles that they want to do, I think that this would be a good opportunity to bring in Daredevil. And what I would like to propose to Fantasy Flight to make this happen, um, I want to propose Daredevil versus Punisher as the next expansion, and this is why. So I'm not huge into using the campaign material. The campaign just doesn't immerse me enough into whatever story that they're trying to craft with these different boxes. Because with the Infinity Stones that they had with Galaxy Most Wanted, Mad Titan Shadow, and Rise of Red Skull, I didn't really feel that much of the story because we just went through this with the MCU. It was a heavy saga, right? So to play this within the game, I think it was a good way to draw people into the game, right? But in terms of I guess trying to grasp me into playing the campaign, it didn't add much to the game for me. So I don't really do the campaigns in Marvel Champions. I feel like when you do a campaign kind of design in a game, there should be a story associated with it, and you should want to care and feel for that story, right? And I feel like over the past several expansions, I haven't gotten that, so the campaign isn't major for me. But I think that with Sinister Motives, they're close with it. I'm currently playing through it now. You can see some of the cards right behind me. I'm going through, looking through them, trying to finish off the set. But I think one thing that they did extremely well with Sinister Motives is the reputation track, where you build up this reputation track. There are different cards that come into play depending on the reputation tracker, and I think that they have something good going on with this particular story. But once again, it still kind of falls short. But with Daredevil versus Punisher, I think that this is a more gripping story because it's something that will be close to home to everyone, and that's what is justice, and that's what Daredevil versus Punisher is all about. That's one of the first comic book runs that I bought personally for myself. Shout out to the guy that was selling those to me at the comic book store. I should not have had my hands on those, but it is what it is. But it led me to appreciating comics the way that I do today. If you haven't checked out the Daredevil versus Punisher by any means necessary, that run was phenomenal. So go and check that out if you haven't. But MCU did a really good job with embracing that comic book run with the Daredevil series and with the Punisher series, with understanding where their sense of justice come from. So what I would like to promote here is to have a similar reputation tracker, but have it a justice tracker that, Daredevil on one end, Punisher on the other. And this can be kind of like a choose your own adventure where going into this box, you can determine whose side you want to be on, whether if it be Daredevil or whether it be Punisher. And that drastically changes how you would play that campaign. So if you go to Daredevil route, where you're going up against you will go up against the same villains as you would Punisher, but the win conditions are different. So we know Punisher is all about laying people down, making sure they don't get back up at all. He's not opposed to killing people. But we know Daredevil, with him going to be a lawyer and trying to set things right with the system, he learned that the system doesn't quite it doesn't do its job more times than not. So that's where his uh the hero side, the vigilante side, come into play with him trying to make up that difference that the justice system doesn't quite allow him to do. So he's on both sides of the fence. But with Daredevil, he believes more in arresting and not killing. So if you decide to go down the Daredevil route, here you're maybe the win condition, instead of trying to knock out the villain, you get their health low enough and try to get rid of minions and side schemes, and you win the game off of that potentially, or whatever that will look like, to where you're not completely defeating the villain, but getting their health low enough and controlling the board will help, with arresting that villain, right? Where if you go with the Daredevil side of it, maybe he's all about just knocking off whoever, whenever, right? And the more minions you go through, maybe that increases, or I guess shifts over that paradigm closer to the Punisher side, with him just trying to kill, or and maybe instead of um, on the Daredevil side, maybe have like more side schemes compared to Punisher, where maybe he have more minion based, of the same villain that they're going up against. So if you're going up against Bullseye, you can have his crew or people that he's known to be around him, plus some additional cronies that can be around him. Whereas with Daredevil, is maybe more about thwarting the side schemes that his cronies are creating, instead of having them as minions. And depending on where you're at, whenever you face different villains, maybe there are certain heroes that you can start to recruit in your endeavor to kind of calm down Hell's Kitchen. So if you go down the Daredevil side, maybe you get more of the defenders that comes in, so you can have a Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist again, but a different version of them, because we're not opposed to seeing different versions of allies in the game, right? You got multiple Peter Parkers, you got multiple Miles Morales. Some of these characters have multiple. War Machine has a few different iterations, so you can have these different heroes that would side more with Daredevil and how he chooses to do justice compared to the Punisher. But if you go down the Punisher route, maybe you go with some heroes in the Midnight Suns, right? You get some Ghost Riders in there, or Moon Knight, or Ghost Rider, Moon Knight. Maybe you get Blade. That kind of that level of vigilanteism where they're not opposed to knocking some heads off, right? And once you get to that final villain, the final villain is either Daredevil or Punisher, right? Depending on what kind of track that you go down. So if you follow along with Daredevil, then Punisher is on the other end, right at the end, right? And then, or if you go the Punisher route, then Daredevil's at the end of it, right? So you get that duality similar to Nebula, where you have both hero versions and villain versions of the different cards. And I think that this kind of system draws more to that emotional side that stories carry, right? Because we don't really get that emotional side with the current sets that we have with expansions. And I can understand that this may cause a time lapse with what Fantasy Flight have with they may have goals that they're meeting, or whatever the case may be. But I would love to just kind of throw this out there and propose it. Let me know what you think in the comments, if this is something that that would excite you, because for me, was I don't care that much about the campaigns because they don't draw me in. And I think that this is a way, of course, I'm very biased towards Daredevil. I'm willing to admit that, but I feel like I would have more of an investment with that level of choice, where I'm trying to figure out what this what that world would look like if I sided more with Daredevil than I would with Punisher, or vice versa, and to have those different win conditions for the different villains to be able to pull it off. But I think even if this took some time to make, I would rather have that as a campaign box than just releasing these campaign boxes and they just feel like what you would expect, just regular games. This gives you more of a reason, and it's more of a thematic feel, where if I'm Daredevil, I'm more trying to beat them into submission, to where I'm having them surrender or be arrested, than compared to Punisher, where he's just going for the kill, right? But that's my proposal to Fantasy Flight. I'll try to tag them in a Twitter video or something, but let me know what you all think about that, because I kind of expressed these feelings earlier, and I think so did D20 Woodworking. Go check out his videos if you haven't. In regards to, I wouldn't say Marvel Champions is getting stale, but we're not seeing anything really new from them, right? We're starting to get just a boatload of villains and heroes that, do something a little different, but it's still somewhat the same game. And what I would hate to happen to Marvel Champions is exactly what happened to Marvel Legendary, right? Where it was a cool system that just got watered down by so much of a rush of content that we can't fully appreciate exactly what it is. Or we appreciate it so much that once we see enough, it just gets to the point where it's just like, I use this analogy in that podcast with Riley on the board game community show, where it's kind of like eating donuts, right? You eat a donut, you eat another one, then after that third or fourth one, if you're gluttonous like me, after that third or fourth one, it kind of loses its flavor, it loses its taste. So I don't want to see that happen with Marvel Champions. I don't think we're at that spot right now, but this would be a beautiful second win to push into the game to make it make you feel more invested to it. Maybe not to the level of Arkham Horror, but it kind of gives you that feel of wanting to see this story pan out the way that you would love to see it, whether if you agree with Daredevil or Punisher, right? And you can play both of them to kind of see how they play out. But I think this would be an interesting way to get more allies into the game to only play, depending on how you do it. And of course, it's just like anything else where you can mix and match it on a standalone. But I think that this would be a way to make the campaigns more of an investment emotionally and make people want to care about these campaigns. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear what you all have to say. Maybe you all enjoy the campaigns far more than I do. They're a nice tick. I'm glad that they're there for people who appreciate them, but they don't really add that much to the game for me. But yeah, thank you for taking the time to check it out. I'm doing whatever I can to get my man Daredevil into the game officially, and Punisher will be a nice add in. I'm not mad at it, but thank you for your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.